activists. But, and as I say today when I speak in front of most groups, since we've been working together, Douglas Bruce, he gets a lot of publicity and he gets a lot of subpoenas. I just get the subpoenas. Because he's more or less he's the public face. He's Mr. Tabor, and everybody knows it in the state. But one of the things that I remind groups of is that if anybody watched the sham trial that he went through last summer, okay, believe me, it was more than a sham. I mean, there is at least, at current count, there is at least 48 major reversible errors that went on in his trial. 48 major reversible errors, from the grand jury procedure that I was subjected to all the way through the course of the trial. One of the things they did, just to give you one example, one of the things that they did during the course of the trial, in order to subpoena me as a witness, of course, they thought that I'd run away to Idaho to escape all this. But, they failed to realize that for 20 years we've been facing their lawsuits, their attacks, the attacks on Tabor. We've gone to federal court. We've been through state court all over the place trying to protect Tabor since it passed. My wife and I were always intending to go home, back to Idaho. And 2009, it was finally an opportunity. Well, just because they had multiple investigations going on for campaign finance violations, all kinds of, there was campaign finance violations, Department of Revenue investigations, anything under the sun, because they've learned over the years that the popularity of Tabor continues to grow. Poll after poll after poll, it passed with 51.5%. Approval ratings in Colorado are now up to 58, 59% the last time they held a poll statewide. They couldn't kill it one way, so they decided maybe, you've heard about the lawsuit that they filed to declare it unconstitutional a couple of years ago, which has gone nowhere. They're saying that the people don't have the right to tell the state legislature how to tax. That was the premise of their lawsuit, and therefore it was unconstitutional. Of course, if that lawsuit had carried through, it would virtually abrogate every state constitution in the United States if that went through to the federal level, okay? By completely invalidating a reserved power of the people under Article 2 of our Constitution, a reserved power of the people. We reserve exclusively for ourselves to legislate when we feel that our legislators are failing. So I think a lot of people realize the implications of trying to carry forward with that kind of a lawsuit, and it's just going to die in the courts like all their other efforts. But in the meantime, what they realized is that the best way to kill Tabor might be to try and completely discredit the authors and primary supporters. So that's been their tactic for the last few years, to drag up all of these investigations, all of these different ludicrous charges, each one which fails in turn, and then they just try another one. Now realize a couple things. He was convicted and sentenced to 6 months and 6 years probation, of which he served 104 days of his sentence. The state attorney general was never able to document any more than $176 of actual misfiled taxes based on a technical error. $176. Okay. keeping the money in the taxpayers' pockets. So I just want you to be very aware, and when you talk to people, when you hear somebody say, oh, that mean old Douglas Bruce, he deserved everything he got, correct them immediately. Because for the punishment that he's taken, he's a very gruff person to work with. I'll be the first one to admit that after 20 years. He's a hard man to work, but, you know, so were people like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. When you're committed to your principles and to your cause, you become very direct in trying to get the job done. And people that don't engage in this process don't understand that you have to really put up a shield to battle all the people that want to take you apart when you get involved at this level. And that's why we need more help. And that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I wrote the book as a handbook. I spent between defense systems procurements as an engineering manager, and that's what brought me to Colorado. I worked on the Consolidated Space Operations Center. I was an engineering manager for Lytton, and our portion of the Space Operations Center, which is now known as Schriever Air Force Base down in Colorado Springs, where all the Space Command elements were pulled together. We had the mission control centers and the worldwide tracking, telemetry, and control system for all the Air Force satellite tracking network that controls all our satellites in space. Between that and the work I did in intelligence overseas for the Naval Security Group and the National Security Agency, I learned a whole lot of things at a very young age. I held a top secret SCI, what's called a SCI EBI Special Access Clearance. There's even of the intelligence community,